Actually, you don't have to spend $1. Imagine this. Become an active member of the community.
Welcome to How to Win with me, Peep Laja. A deep dive into stunning winners in B2B SaaS to determine how much is strategy, how much is luck, and how do you win.
How do B2B SaaS marketing leaders start their vendor search in 2025? I don't even check Google first anymore. That's what 72% of B2B software buyers shared in Winter's 2025 buyer research study. Folks are starting their vendor research somewhere else entirely. Winter surveyed 300 B2B SaaS CMOs, CTOs, CFOs, relevant VPs from 50 million to 1 billion plus companies about how they discover new software. And here's where they start their search: dark social. 72% begin their journey in private communities before moving to public sources. Marketing leaders overwhelmingly turn to peer networks on private Slack channels, WhatsApp groups, and professional communities first.
I feel that dark social was a hot topic in 2019. Yet here we are, the new study shows that that's how people buy, and that's the first step. What do you think is different in 2025? How has dark social evolved?
I'll be honest, I always have had kind of a hate relationship with the term dark social. I feel like it's always been there, right? It's not like something new was created in 2019. What's happening is as old as time. Buying is about trust, and that's never changed. And how people come to their feeling of trust has evolved and will always continue evolving. And I think especially in the next few years, we're going to see it evolve even more with AI. To me, what's happening now is, I think, very much a result of what happened in COVID, which is, we had this period of time that was very unusual in the world where everybody was sort of forced to figure out new ways of getting information and of also forming human connection. And so community really took off during that time. Like, community's been around forever, but it took off because there was this need and it was an outlet. There's no like completely dialing back that change. I've been saying for a few years, like, community is the new Google, and it's because it's just easier, right? Like, everybody still wants information they can trust. And what's the easiest and quickest and best way to get it? And the answer to that right now is through communities, because I think I said this in response to your post. Like, would you rather go on Google and search and parse through 3 pages of results that may or may not be AI generated, might have been written by a 20-year-old content marketing manager who Googled to get the answer? Or would you like to go into a community and ask a marketing leader or 5 that you really admire what's working for them? I know exactly what I would do in that situation. And that's what I see all the time. We just want good information quickly. We want to know we can trust it, and we want it to be easy. And right now, community is delivering that better than anything else.
Kathleen speaks about the new reality. Your average piece of content on Google is either low quality or likely not written by someone who actually lives the truth. Asking an experienced peer is a shortcut. It's high fidelity information. Like one CMO in our study said, "My WhatsApp group of CMOs is my first stop." Google is still important. Half the people Google tools in a category when looking for vendors, but it is no longer the automatic first stop. Only 9% start there. Google is mostly used by buyers to validate what they heard from peers.
So Dave, what do you think? Is dark social a fringe term that people hate, or have private communities, WhatsApp groups, and so on actually become a primary marketing channel?
So I got a couple things. Number one, it's always been a thing. Call up our buddy Chris Walker. It's because he started provocatively and proactively calling it dark social and named it. And just like anything in marketing, go read Seth Godin's book Permission Marketing from 1999, right? Go read marketing books from the 80s. It is all the same things. We argue about them online, but you can lump them all into the same exact things. It's timeless. Those principles are timeless. There's a book, Word of Mouth Marketing, that was written probably in the early 90s, right? It is all the same. We just gave it a term, and Chris is super smart, and I'm a big fan of his, and he has a strong voice online. He started talking about it a lot and gave it the term dark social. For me, I've been doing dark social marketing since even before any of them, because this is what we did at Drift. This is what I did at another company before that. It's essentially building word of mouth online in channels that are harder to track. So on top of that, like, I think a couple other things happened. Number one, social media exploded, which means, like, it used to be social media and marketing. And I think now social media has become the marketing channel. It's not a channel that you give to the intern. Things change with privacy and tracking and pixels. And so, like, almost a lot of those things are now harder to track directly. Then you add the rise of communities like Pavilion and others, right? And the challenge is in those communities, you can't promote your stuff. You have to do it in an authentic and organic way where you're talking about the products and things that you actually use. And so the best way to do that is to be authentic, is to not drop a link. And by the way, there's not going to be a link there, but 2 days later, someone's going to go to that website. It's going to show up as direct search, right? And so we just like to name things. We like to obsess with tracking everything perfectly, but this has actually been the only way of marketing that I've ever known. And it's why I love like you, Pep, and Winter. It's like, I remember you talking to me about Winter. You're like, yeah, right now we just need more people to know we exist. And I'm like, amen. Like that marketing can be that simple. We like to just name things and argue about things because we can.
People are increasingly more reliant on trusted peers, networks as a filter. But how does a startup, if you're not Salesforce or HubSpot, how do you get inside those recommendations so people on Pavilion would actually recommend you?
Well, first, I just want to say I totally agree with everything that Dave just said, because like the behavior I see is just what he described, which is like step one, you go and you ask a question. What's the best solution for X? Or what are you all using for Y? A bunch of people name a couple of vendors, and it seems like 2 or 3 emerge as the ones that everyone's plus oneing. And then you go and you don't organic search, it's direct branded search right to those companies' websites to be like, all right, do they really do what everyone says they do? And do they meet my needs? And so to get an at bat, like you have to be one of the names that's mentioned. And I think Dave said something really important, which is like, go to market through community is not going in and just selling. Like that never works. If you ever want to see it really like extremely in action, go try and do that in Reddit and see how you're like torn to shreds. But I think like that's an extreme example, but most communities are like that. There's an unspoken rule that you're not going to be there pitching yourself. And so it's about being helpful, which is kind of like weirdly the same principle HubSpot was talking about 10 years ago, like stop selling and start educating. It's just manifesting differently. And again, I think it goes back to what we all want as human beings. We don't want to be pitched. We want somebody who's going to add value. And in community, that's like help first. Be somebody that like makes introductions, answers questions, teaches people something, solves their problems, and earn trust. But here's the thing, it's like both beautiful and also challenging, because most marketers, what they suck at is consistency and playing a long game. Most people are looking for quick fixes, which is why a lot of them will always default to like the classic approaches of lead magnets and paid ads and things like that. And not to say that those channels don't work, but this is a different play, and you have to be willing to like really be consistent about it. It's the same thing with like LinkedIn personal branding, which I know you both know a lot about.
LinkedIn's role in software buying process is not what you think. Sure, they turn to it, but they're not looking at ads. What they are doing is checking personal connections who work at the vendor companies, searching for organic posts from actual users mentioning the brand, hoping for a case study or a review of some kind. Organic content that people consume over time on LinkedIn is informing people's consideration sets. As one CMO put it, I'm already starting with some base knowledge of the product space based on my LinkedIn content.
Can we build on a piece of that, by the way? Because this is the trap that marketers fall into, and I've been in this, is like, let's say all of a sudden you start to notice that you're getting inbound from Reddit in that example, right? The natural reaction as marketers and as your CFO and whoever inside the company is gonna be like, oh, we're getting a bunch of inbound from Reddit. We got to go do more on Reddit. And you're like, well, we didn't do anything. Someone just, someone happened to mention us in that post. And so then it becomes this whole thing like, let's do more on Reddit. But then when you actually try to do more, it's like, this is the hardest. This is a cool topic, because this topic of dark social, word of mouth, it is like the furthest thing from direct response. And so you can't just like, the takeaway is not like, oh, let's go post in more communities because we're noticing that communities are driving referrals for us. It's like, actually, no, if you zoom all the way out, the meta thing is like, more people are starting to know we exist. More of the right people are talking about us. And I don't know if it was in permission marketing, and I think it was in Seth Godin. He initially talked about this concept of, this was like OG influencer marketing. He called them sneezers. And it was like, you want to find the sneezers in your industry because like, if I'm hanging out with you two and one of us sneezes, you infect me with the germs and the message spreads, right? And that's ultimately what this is. And so it's more like, okay, how do we influence more of that? And so it's hard because we want to treat marketing like this coin machine. Like, we just got a bunch of things from Reddit. Let's go back there with more money. And it just doesn't work like that.
Here's something we do at Winter with some success. Every time a customer says something good about us in a conversation with someone in our team, in their replies to our newsletters or our live chat, we ask them, hey, could you please post about this on LinkedIn? Not everyone will, but a lot of people do, and that's the most powerful form of advertising.
Getting sneezed about more often also depends on pure connections. Like more people need to know you and like you. So how do you facilitate peer connections today without being pushy?
It is, I think, peer connections, but it's also honestly brand. And Dave, I saw you post about this recently and I was like nodding my head in the background. I think you said like brand is the last moat. And I believe that. Like with AI, it's getting harder to know what to trust, like what's really human, what is real, and it is only going to get harder. I see people post all the time about companies that they haven't been customers of, or maybe they don't even know anybody, but they like there's a brand lore or legend that has happened and people like love the brand and they trust it. And so I think there's two ways to come at it. One is this community play of forming peer connections. The other is investing in a loved brand that forms an emotional connection in the mind of your broader audience. And I think when those two collide, that's when like the magic really happens. Because one person will be like, well, I'm a customer of, in this case, Drift. And then like 5 more people will be like, I love Drift. They're awesome. And they might not have even ever used Drift. But the result is like you get this momentum that's pretty magical. And I think like that's something I've seen with like Drift as an example of it. Gong, Udi Lettergore built that at Gong where people would just be like, Gong's amazing. And half of them had never been customers. So I think it's those two things, brand and peer connection, that are really important together. But I'd love to hear your perspective, Dave.
How do you be liked? How do you get people to talk about you online? And I think that comes from not having this laundry list of features, and it becomes having a strong, like it comes all the way back to probably what the purpose of you starting this show in the beginning, Pep, and so many great interviews you've had on. It's like the 80-20 in this game is your narrative and your company story and your strategy and how do you differentiate and how are you going to win. And then if you do that and you resonate with your buyers, like the conversations are going to take care of themselves. If you strike a story around a pain point in a clearly defined niche or audience, and those people are online, they're going to talk about products on forums, right? You could pick any hobby, CrossFit, running, knitting, go find those communities online and people are talking about new products and innovative ideas and strategies or whatever. Your goal is how do you be that for who you sell to in B2B? And that comes down to having a strong story. All those brands you mentioned, HubSpot, inbound marketing, they created a movement around that was bigger than the brand. Drift, conversational marketing. It's not the fringe brands who get those mentions in those communities. It's the communities that start sucking up mind share by having a strong point of view in the market.
If I wanted to spend more on community marketing this coming year, what do you actually spend money on? Like, what do you buy?
Actually, you don't have to spend $1. I would say I would have somebody on your team. Imagine this, become an active member of the community. And that means reading the posts, liking the posts, commenting, adding value, never pitching your product. It's like the same thing how you'd build an audience on social. So go in there and buy a Pavilion membership. And if that's what you want if that's your investment, then be like, I'm going to comment every single day. I'm going to spend 10 minutes every single day in Pavilion and I'm going to treat it like my inbox. I'm going to spend 10 minutes every single day in Exit 5 and I'm going to treat it like my inbox. Pep, I remember you from back in the day on inbound.org and Growth Hackers. I remember being in those communities early and we were like posting articles in there, but we were doing it in a way where it was like, I would be in there contributing all the time. And then maybe 1 out of every 20 posts, I would say, by the way, we wrote this thing. That'd be number 1. It's like, it's not about spending. Number 2 would be my real play would be to create something that members of these communities are going to talk about. And so I would invest that money in something interesting for a marketing campaign. It would be like original research, something entertaining, something informational, a report, a survey, some data. We did something crazy at a conference. Like those are the things that are then going to trickle down into those communities. And that's how people are going to talk about them. It's a little bit counterintuitive because you can't just say, well, we got all the budget in the world. Can I just pay and I can just get mentions in these communities? It doesn't work like that. This is like the craziest part. You have to make a product that people love and a product that people enjoy using. And you have to build a great experience. A good example of this is like everybody's talking about Clay right now because Clay is everywhere. So another play is like they basically pay a bunch of people to like post about using their product. That's a community strategy that gets people talking about it on LinkedIn. Doesn't necessarily get people posting on LinkedIn or Exit 5, but I think influencers is becoming another part of this where if you can't post directly, you can pay people who can post directly, and you can basically pay for their word of mouth. That is another possibility.
I totally agree when I talk about this, because I do get this question a lot. I mean, there's obviously ways to pay to get access to communities. There's sponsoring, there's all, you sponsor events, you can sponsor other things. And I think we're probably very similar to Exit 5. I mean, I'm an Exit 5 member, a great community. And I think from like an ethos standpoint, we probably approach it similarly. And I always tell people like, sure, cut a check, sponsor things. But like, if you do that without organically participating as members, it is throwing good money after bad. And we actually have a great case study on our site of a company, Carabiner Group, that I think is like the example of how to do it, which is first they joined. And there's this guy, Cliff Simon, who was their head of sales. And he literally, I think we went into our Slack analytics, and after he joined, we figured out he was the single most active person in Pavilion Slack. And it was all like value add. It was all making intros, helping people, answering questions. He just was like everywhere. I don't even know how he did it, but he made this commitment to like throw himself into it. And he looked at it as part of the job. And that's I think a piece of it, which is if you're an employer, if you're a go-to-market executive, like this is something I think needs to be a part of your team's job descriptions. Like you got to hire people who are willing to lean in. What wound up happening is that people just got to know, like, and trust Cliff, right? And so what happened is eventually people would be like, well, what's a great RevOps agency? And of course, everyone was like, well, you should talk to Cliff at Carabiner Group. And in our case study, it was something like at 1.70% of their pipeline came from Pavilion, and they've since been acquired by SBI. So it's a huge success story, but again, there was no like easy check the box solution there. Like it was Cliff going in, and then Seamus, the founder, who went to like every event we threw for 3 years and just sat at the table and participated, that led them to that. So no easy path, but if you're willing to commit and like participate, I think not only can you get business, but like, oh, by the way, all of these people like learned, became better operators, and grew their careers because of what they gained personally from the community too. So if you approach it like that, I think there's a lot of value, but you cannot half-ass it.
My last question would be how to think about the ROI or the business case here. So I can sit all day long and comment on Pavilion stuff, or PMA, which is a community of product marketers, which is my primary buyer at Winter. And I inquired about, like some things I can do with them. And it's like crazy expensive, like, oh, I want to speak at a conference, $40,000, and so on and so forth. And in the end, I'm like, oh my God, annual commitment is like $200K. I could do a lot of things with $200K. Do you think like investing in this kind of like community paid engagement things is a better ROI than, I don't know, running ads or putting any, marketing dollars anywhere else?
There's kind of this slippery slope of like, you remember when Forbes and Inc. used to be like a big deal from a marketing perspective? Like if you got your CEO to get a guest column in Inc., and then over time, everyone realized like it's just all crap and it's all paid and anyone can do it and the quality goes down. And so it's like, if you run an event and all the speakers have to pay 40 grand to speak, then like the universe of people who are going to be able to get to speak. So that kind of has diminished. It doesn't work the same. For me, though, the way that I would think about it is we see it all the time, or we hear companies that we work with is people will tell you, they will tell you if you invest in Product Marketing Alliance, PEP, they will tell you that when they buy Winter, whether it is self-reported attribution or somewhere in the notes or in talking to a salesperson or whatever, they will tell you that they heard about you through that thing and they're going to want to do more with you. And so I think it's never going to be some perfect number in a pie chart to show you the ROI on it, but I think you can get a pretty good feeling. And we talk to sponsors now, and we're working with one company that does event management, and they're like, yeah, we can attribute 21 ICP opportunities to Exit 5 because people tell us that they heard about us through Exit 5, and it's just self-reported, and that is perfectly good enough to measure the success of it. And so a little bit of like, let's not overcomplicate how to measure that stuff at the same time.
Yeah, you got to ask how they heard about you. And it's, if you just rely on what your attribution systems tell you, you're going to spend money in the wrong places. The qualitative information is really where it's at. It goes back to what we started with. If you're participating meaningfully as an individual, you're also just going to know where it came from because you're going to see the conversations happening. You probably were a part of them when it shows up in your lead form, or, more often than not, you're like, they're coming directly to you through a DM in the community. It's not that hard to figure out when you're doing it that way. But if you also layer qualitative attribution on top of that in the form of a, how did you hear about us? That, I think that gets you as far as you really need to get a sense for what the ROI is.
Key takeaways on how to win in dark social. 1. Own the conversation inside peer communities. 72% of B2B buyers start their search in private groups before anywhere else. Treat Pavilion, Exit 5, WhatsApp groups like your daily inbox. Show up consistently, answer questions, make introductions, and never pitch. When someone asks, which tool should I use for X? Your brand becomes one of the first 3 names mentioned because people know, like, and trust you. 2. Build a brand worth talking about, not just features worth buying. The strongest moat isn't your tech, it's your narrative. Create a movement bigger than your product. A sharp, differentiated story plus memorable brand creates emotional connections that turn both customers and onlookers into sneezers who spread your idea. As Kathleen noted, half the people who recommend tools have never been customers, but they still promote you. 3. Fuel and track word of mouth on purpose. Create share-worthy artifacts like original research, nifty features, and explicitly ask happy customers to post about them. Forget perfect attribution. Focus on self-reported discovery with a simple "how'd you hear about us" field. The qualitative data beats your attribution system every time. When multiple buyers say, "read it," that's your signal to get more of your customers to post about you on there. And that's how you win. Thanks for listening. Tell your friends.